Hey everyone, just quick announcement before I share today's episode with Kristy Kowal. Kristy has an amazing story and excited for her to get to share that with you guys. But I just want to take a minute to share the release of my first children's book of my Healthy Children's Book series called Maddox's Trip to the Chiropractor. It's a cute book with bright pictures that follows a toddler on her trip to the chiropractor. It shows her excitement and how she knows that it impacts her health in a positive way. And each purchase of the book will be supporting a project that I started called the Unlock Wellness Project. For each purchase of the book, we will be donating a wellness bag to a child in need. These wellness bags will include non-toxic, chemical-free essentials such as soap, shampoo, toothpaste, a toothbrush, items that a lot of the times children in tough situations don't have access to. You can learn more about the book and about the Unlock Wellness Project by going to drkaseyjohnson.com. That's DRKASEY Johnson.com. Click on the Shop tab, then click the Children's Book option. You'll be able to read a short description and even watch a short video with more information. You can also purchase the book directly on Amazon.com by searching Maddox's Trip to the Chiropractor. But I hope you guys love the book. Be sure to check out my website to learn more, and thank you so much for the support. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Kristy Kowal. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness Podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Kristy Kowal, and Kristy is an Olympic medalist. She represented the United States at the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney, winning the silver medal in the 200-meter breaststroke. She's won so many awards and honors, and her athletic performance is just so amazing, but Kristy's journey definitely wasn't an easy one. It took an incredible amount of perseverance and heart, and I'm just extremely excited and honored to have her on today to share her story. So, Kristy, thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, and shout out to Caroline because she connected us, and she's amazing as well, and so is Rebecca. I know you guys are all close and everything. So,
oh my gosh, yes, they are so awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Yeah. No, we were just talking before. Kristy's actually in California for a little bit, and she got to hang out extra with them the last, what was the time frame?
Oh my gosh. So yes, I've been out here since July. And so since I've been out here, I've gotten to do lots of fun things. Like, I've gotten to do open water swims just on the weekends with them. And I think the last time I probably should have worn a wetsuit, but I didn't.
So. What's the water temperature right now? Is it pretty cold?
Oh my gosh. So I had to get used to the fact that Pacific Ocean cold is not Atlantic Ocean cold. Like Atlantic Ocean will get warm. It'll get to the point where you can get in and it's warm and it's, you don't need a wetsuit. But Pacific Ocean for me is always freezing.
Yeah.
So it's not Florida warm.
Right.
But so I think the last swim I did a swim on Thanksgiving Day without a wetsuit. And I think the water might have been 60. It was one of those take your breath away. Like you can't breathe. You need a minute to remind yourself that like calm your breathing down and your heart's not going to stop.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's definitely really cool. That's funny. But no, let's just jump in to your backstory and kind of just like walk us through, how you even got into swimming. So let's just, take it way back.
Oh my gosh, sure. So I started swimming when I was 5 years old. My mom is not the strongest swimmer in the world. And so she decided that she wanted my brother and I to be able to swim in the summers. We were going to be spending our summer days at the pool and she wanted us to be water safe. So she signed us up for the swim team. We had been doing like the Mommy and Me, the lessons, things like that. So she signed us up for the summer league swim team and I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. I had a blast. I was terrible. I was absolutely horrible at it. I was the little kid who seriously sat on the side of the pool during practice, shivering and freezing. And I think I asked the coaches, like, how much longer is practice? Probably a million times just because I was so cold that at, I think the end of the year, they give out little presents. Mm-hmm. And one year they gave me a watch. Because like a little kid watch because they were like, you always ask how much longer, so here you go.
Right.
But it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying practice. I was just so cold all the time because I was skinny and teeny.
It's Pennsylvania was where you grew up, right?
Yes.
So like I know like when I did swim team when I was young too, like you have those early practices like the 6, 7, 8 a.m. and the water is really cold.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of the summer, the pool is freezing. It's not heated. It's just like they fill it with the well, and come May and June, that water is freezing.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you started at a young age, and like, how did it progress from there? Like you said, like you were awful. Like when did
Oh my gosh, I was so bad.
start to progress? Like when did it start to all kind of click for you?
Around high school. So even when I was I think 12 years old, there were so many people on our YMCA team that they had to put us onto different groups, like the A team, the B team, the C team, because there were so many of us that they had to split us up for practices, for meets. And so my best friends, they were all on the A team because they were these really, really great swimmers. And I was not on the A team, and I was not on the B team. I was on the C team, which is like the needs improvement group. And I remember asking my coach, like, hey, my friends are on the A team. Can I be on the A team too? And he was like, no. So, but that was really like the first time I figured out, like at practice, the harder you work at practice, the faster you're going to get. And so I started improving and improving. But it wasn't until high school that I actually started getting faster. I was a butterflyer starting out in my career. Well, I thought I was a butterflyer. And once I figured out you had to swim 4 laps of butterfly when you were 13, I literally was like, no, thank you. I don't want to try that.
Dream. Like if you've never tried to do butterfly and you're listening, like
no,
just go try it and then like see how far you need to do it and try that. It's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. If you watch the Olympics and you watch Michael Phelps do it, he makes it look pretty and graceful. And apparently like my coach from Georgia did a speech and he compared my butterfly to a dying polar bear, like making its way through the water. I'm like, oh really? It wasn't that bad, but it wasn't good. So once I figured out that breaststroke was more my thing, additionally, my high school coaches, they decided that, you know how girls are in high school. You don't want to step on each other's toes. You don't want to upset each other. So I was a freshman coming in and I didn't want to ever go in front of any of the older girls. So even if I would like touch their feet in practice and probably should have gone in front of them, they would be like, oh, do you want to go? I was like, no, it's okay. I'm good going last. Like, I'm fine. I never wanted to step on anybody's toes. I didn't want to make anybody mad or give anybody any reason to get upset with me. So my coaches saw this happening and they grabbed me out of my lane and they threw me in the lane with the older high school boys. and they told them, make her go fast. Yeah. And the boys thought that this was a game. They thought it was wonderful. And they were like, I remember them looking at me saying, we're going to run you over. So go fast. And they were serious. They didn't mean that they were going to swim around me. They swam straight over me. And I got really good at ducking and rolling and hiding under the water. And then but it was swimming for survival. So I was working really hard every day and basically swimming for my life. So in high school, I started training a lot harder and I got faster. And high school is when I won my first high school state title when I was a sophomore. And after my junior year, I won the high school state title and I had a coach come up to me and say, hey, you qualified for U.S. Nationals. And I was like, what are those? I don't know what that is. And they were like, oh, like you're going to go swim with all of the best swimmers in the country. And I was like, oh, okay. And they're like, and it's in California. I was like, oh, sign me up. Like, I want to do this. And what I didn't realize is that, I saw my first Olympics when I was like 8 years old and saw Janet Evans and Summer Sanders on the TV and wanted to be them. And all of a sudden I was going to get to go to nationals with them. So this was just like so exciting and amazing. And we did go to the meet and I spent the first 2 days chasing around my heroes with a disposable camera because I was too shy to ask them for their pictures. So I just ran around taking pictures of them while they were turned around. Like I have great pictures of their backs. Great pictures of their backs.
That's hilarious. Yeah. You have to go like find them now. It's like, oh, hey, Summer.
I'm like, so this is you?
That's funny. So like, were you like taking it seriously in high school? Like, like the people that really want to be an Olympian and they're going to all these special, these special swim teams and the special practices, like, were you taking it serious like that? Or you just happened to be doing really well at a pool that was able to promote you to other places? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I actually, I was just training with my high school. I was swimming once a day. I didn't do morning. I had done one morning practice, and I hated it. I didn't like smelling like chlorine. I didn't like getting up that early in the morning. And the boy who drove me to practice that morning showed up at my house, and he hadn't defrosted his windows. So he had the windows rolled down, and he was driving with his head out the window, and I was in the back seat getting hit with all of the freezing cold air. So I'm like, this is terrible. I hate this. So I made it to my first nationals just practicing with my high school team. And in Pennsylvania, high school swimming is a really big thing. I didn't grow up with any clubs within an hour of me. So I swam with my high school team. And then after I made it to my first nationals, at my first nationals, that was actually one of the first long course meets I had ever swam in. And I qualified for my first national team at my first nationals. I got second place at my first nationals.
That's cool.
And, so it was crazy. Like my introduction to U.S. swimming was very whirlwind. I did start training.
You think that played an advantage though, just not like where you didn't
have
pressure on yourself. Yeah.
I loved it. I thought that, and everybody's path is different, but for me, I thought that was really great. I did start going to, just because you do have to swim with a USS team to go to nationals. I started driving about an hour away to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania from Reading, Pennsylvania with a couple of my friends to swim maybe like once or twice a week with a club team there so I could represent them at nationals. And that was really hard on my family because I have a younger brother and he's in activities. My mom's a teacher. So we would come home from school. I would do my homework in the car. My mom had just finished a long day of teaching and she would drive me to practice in Harrisburg a few times a week. And my mom wouldn't see my brother till we got home at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was really hard. So but once I made my first nationals and made my first, so I swam my first race and I swam 100 breaststroke and I ended up getting second place. And I got out of the water and I'm like walking and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go see my parents. This is so cool. I got second place in my first nationals. I'm going to go on the award stand. And I got stopped by drug testing. And I was like, what do you mean I have to get drug tested? I don't take drugs. Like, I'm like, I don't know. I'm 16. I don't know what you're doing. And then I also got stopped by people from USA Swimming. And they were like, congratulations, Kristy. This is awesome. You've made the US national team. You've made Pan Pacific championships. And I was like, oh.
What's that exactly?
Okay. I was like, so that is, and they're like, yeah, we're going to go to Atlanta. You're going to compete against every team, every country that has a Pacific Ocean as its border. You're going to like go with Team USA. And I was like, oh no, that's okay. I don't want to do that. And they're like, wait, what? I think I was like the first person ever who had declined like their first national team trip. And I was like, no. And they're like, no, Kristy, you don't say no to this. Like this, you're Team USA. Like,
yeah,
yes. And I was like, no. And they finally, for like 30 minutes, I was adamant. And they were like, go get her parents, bring them in. Like we can. And so finally, they asked me, they're like, why don't you want to be on this team? And I was like, oh, because I don't know anybody. I don't have any friends on this team. They're like, you won't make friends.
Right.
And so my first friend was actually, the first person I met was Michael Phelps' sister. It was awesome. So Whitney was my first person that I like met, and she's like, hey, come sit over here. And it was awesome. I'm so glad like that they finally talked me into it.
That's funny. No, that's really cool. And it's like, yeah. So I mean, the main reason that you didn't want to is just because you didn't know anybody. And
exactly. Literally, I knew no one, and I was like, okay, so I'm going to be on a team with all of these like famous swimmers like Jenny Thompson and Amy Van Dyken, and oh my gosh, like I don't belong here. I don't know any of these people. Yeah, it was so wild. It was so wild.
So that's cool. So obviously you got talked into that. So like how did it kind of like go from there?
Well, it was a very strange experience because we went to Atlanta. It was so much fun. I was having the best time. And while I was there, the roommate, I was placed with another girl who was also a rookie, and she had never been on another team before. And I came back from practice one day and all of her stuff was gone. and they told me that there was a family illness. And what it eventually came out that we found is that she had failed one of her drug tests. And so then not only was I alone in this giant place, but usually like your roommate is the person you go to meals with, and it's the person that you go get the bus with, and it's your person that you depend. You're like, okay, what are we wearing? Because you wear a uniform every day, so it's like you double check, like, are we wearing the right thing today? Right. So all of a sudden, I didn't have this person, so I didn't want to go to the meet. I didn't know anybody, and now I don't have
to begin with.
Now I don't have a roommate. I was like, what's going on? But BJ Bedford, who was a backstroker for Team USA, I have to say she just kind of stormed in and just took over and was like, hey, I'm going to take care of you. And so everything turned out okay.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, that's crazy that, like, I mean, did you guys see a lot of that, like, of people not passing their drug tests?
Well, what happened is it actually got overturned. So eventually it was, oh my gosh, I stood by her. I remember at Olympic trials, she was able to swim. And I remember just standing by her during the national anthem one day, and there were cameras in her face. And she was 14 or 15. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of those things that I don't remember the specific details of it, but whatever happened is it got overturned and she was allowed to swim. So, it was just a crazy, I don't know if it was a mistake in it, but it was
awful thing ever to have that, like, mistaken, like a mistake like that.
Yes.
Because it just sticks with you like forever. That would be like the worst thing in the world.
Absolutely. It just throws off everything. It's just like that one blip in time that just changes everything.
Right. Man, that's
yes.
Crazy. So how did your competition start to go once you started to get, like, in a routine with everybody?
Oh, it was awesome. So that first meet I remember in the finals of the 100 breaststroke, I ended up tying Amanda Beard. We tied for 4th place. I had the best time at that meet, and just remember standing, because we were using the pool that would be used for the Olympics in 1996. And I just remember standing there and looking around and thinking, okay, I got 2nd place at nationals. And in order to qualify for the Olympic team, you have to get 1st or 2nd in your event. So if I can just do that, come March, which was when our Olympic trials was, I'm going to be back here next summer, like a year from now. I'm going to be back here and I'm going to be representing Team USA, and I will say yes this time. And I will be back here as an Olympian, which is what I wanted to do since I was a little girl. It's all I wanted to do. And, my parents, even when I was that little teeny tiny swimmer that was like, I want to be an Olympian. And, on the C team, my parents never said no, like, oh, honey, maybe not. They were always behind me 100%. So they were in the stands and my brother was in the stands. I just remember thinking, like, if I could just get 1st or 2nd in a couple months, I'm going to be right back here.
Mm-hmm. Man, so you ended up breaking a world record at that match, right? Or at that competition?
No. So, what happened was when we went to Olympic trials in 1996, I ended up missing the Olympic team by 17/100ths of a second.
That's crazy. You think
yes.
how little of a time that is? It's just,
oh my gosh.
That's so crazy.
It was crazy. So I was 17 years old. I was a senior in high school, and I missed the team by 17/100ths of a second. And I did what any 17-year-old does. I climbed out of the water and I went over and sat at the diving well and started crying. And I'm looking up at my parents and my grandparents and my uncle and my brother, and they're all like, we love you. We love you. And I was just like, like, thumbs down, no. I'm so sad. And little did I know that there was somebody taking pictures. The photographers were taking pictures, and my picture would end up on the cover of Swimming World magazine as a split cover saying the agony and the ecstasy of Olympic trials. And I was the agony.
Oh, man. And, like, you're 17 and, like, it's hard enough. That's awful. And
my parents hid that magazine in the closet until somebody showed it to me at school, and I came home. I was like, "Oh my God, did you see it?" And my parents pulled it out of the closet, like, "We've been hiding it." Came a couple days ago. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can never show my face again, ever." And it's stank. I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up, but I knew that if I gave up, I would never have another chance to become an Olympian. So,
right. Well, at the same time, though, it's like it kind of just. I mean, it sucks, obviously, but like it still reinforces that you're on the right track. You know, like you're getting like attention from people that are really, you know, pushing the sport out there. So it's like you're on the right track, but at the same time, it's still awful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I just remember being at Georgia and just thinking, okay, this is where I get to start. So I went into my freshman year at the University of Georgia and I was like, I'm going to start over again. Like, no one's going to know me as the girl who was on the cover of Swimming Girl magazine. And one of my teammates on the first day of practice was like, hey, is this you? I was like, oh.
Can you sign my magazine?
Yes, that is me.
Oh, that's
yes.
So you ended up going to University of Georgia, and how was the program at that time? Or were you kind of like the person that they brought in to help the program, or was it already a pretty strong program as well?
The program was already pretty strong. It was a top 5 program, and I actually met Jack, my coach. He was the coach that was in charge of the breaststrokers at Pan Pacific Championship. So I believe like everything kind of like the stars all aligned perfectly. Mm-hmm. You know, I said no initially to making the team, but then Jack was the coach that was in charge of the breaststrokers, and he and I clicked immediately. Like I knew when I came home from Pan Pacs that I wanted to swim for him. Even though I hadn't even started taking my recruiting trips. I came home and I had planned 4 recruiting trips, and I had been saving 1 just in case, you know, something came along. And I was a 17-year-old senior. So a lot of coaches, like even at Pan Pacs, are like, we didn't know you were a senior. And so it was because I was coming out of high school. Like I hadn't done USS swimming. This was my first nationals. And so I told Jack, I was like, yeah, I want to go on a recruiting trip to Georgia. And I came home and I told my parents, and my parents were like, what? Georgia? Do they have a pool? And so, you know, we busted out Swimming World, you know, not the one with my cover on it, but we busted out one of the Swimming Worlds that had the college rankings, and we broke out the huge college book that tells you about I wanted to be a teacher, so the College of Education. And we found out that it was like a top 10 program for the College of Education. And my dad's like, oh, this sounds great. So we set up the recruiting trip, and you know, once I was on that recruiting trip, I knew that was the place for me.
That's cool. So like, whenever you started, you know, your swimming season there, like, were you able to jump in kind of at full force, or did it take you a little bit to adapt?
Oh, my first Saturday morning practice. Oh, it was so bad.
Now you have to Saturday.
Oh, it was so bad. Oh, it was so bad. Okay, so I was used to swimming 1 practice a day with high school, and Division I. Oh my gosh, it was a whole new world.
Yeah, I can't.
We were doing, I remember on my, my orientation, when we went down to sign up for classes, I remember Jack and Harvey sitting with me. Harvey was he's the associate head coach now, and he was the distance coach when I was at Georgia. And they sat down with me and we were having breakfast, and they were writing out my schedule, and they're like, Monday doubles, Tuesday single and weights and everything, you know, Wednesday double, Friday double. They wrote Saturday, you belong to us. And I was like, oh God. So the first Saturday practice rolls around, and I'm like, we had just swam for I don't even know how many hours. And I was like, I can't move anymore. They're like, now we're going to go do dry land. I was like, I can't do it. So we're running across from the pool to the intramural fields carrying medicine balls. One of the senior girls was like, come on, Kristy, I'll be your partner. And the first thing we do is we lay down on the ground, and we're getting ready to do like the push-up throws where we're laying on the ground and pushing it up, and our partner's going to like slam it back down at us. And oh my God, she was holding the ball on top of my head and thought I was ready. So the first thing she does is drop a 12-pound ball on my face. I was like, oh, she's like, so that was part 1. And then we start running, and we're running around an intramural field. And I'm like, I can't run anymore. I can't do it. And then I look at the people who aren't running, and they're doing push-ups. I'm like, I can't do push-ups anymore. So I did what I could only think of doing, is I hid in the bushes. And I'm like curled up into the smallest ball that I can possibly curl a 6'2" body into.
That's
and all of a sudden I hear Steve Boltman, who's now the coach at Texas. He was our breaststroke coach, and he comes over. He's like, Kristy. I'm like, no, no, he can't see me. I know he can't. And he's like, you need to keep running. I was like, I can't. Oh my God. I got home back to our dorms and I called my parents and I was like, you need to come get me. I am not Division I material. And my parents said, we just drove 12 hours to take you there and we just drove 12 hours to home. Right. You need to figure it out. I was like, but just come get me.
That's hilarious.
Oh, they're like, nope, figure it out.
That's funny. I can just like imagine you like in the bushes.
Oh God. I thought I was invisible. And literally every year after that, I like found the freshman that I was like, you were me. Let's go. Come on. I'll run with you. It's going to be okay.
That's funny. That's really funny. So it took you a little while to get that groove. So like when did you really feel like you like started to feel like you could do it? And
it took me a little bit, but I eventually, like later into the fall, I started feeling like, okay, I'm making some intervals. Okay, I'm finding my step. You know, classes started. I had a regular routine, and I felt like I was finally like finding my groove. And I loved Georgia. There was our team. You know that you really found your place when you feel like you're surrounded with your family and all of your, you know, I felt like when I got to Georgia, I didn't know anybody. Like I had nobody from home with me. I didn't know anybody. And I felt like I walked onto a team of 50 friends and family. So I think that really helped me make the transition, because this was my first time, like Pennsylvania to Georgia is a long ways away. I mean, it's not across the country, but it was a far way for a 17-year-old freshman. Yeah. And so, but I felt that really helped make the transition. Plus our coaching staff, like I can't say enough about them. They were awesome. So I felt like that I found my groove like into the fall of my freshman year, and then just kept rolling with it.
Yeah, because you won like a lot of, really amazing awards while you were in college. So like, were most of those later on in college, or were like they all over the place?
So my sophomore year is when I broke my first American record, and I actually broke that American record when I was, it was about a month away from going to World Championships in Australia. And I was really, really, really sick. My parents had driven down. It was our Georgia invite, and it was in December. And I was really, really, really sick. My throat was on fire. I felt so bad, and I had to go to the doctor in between prelims and finals, and they were like, "Oh, we think you have mono." And I was like, please don't tell anybody that, because I want to go to Worlds in a month, and it's in Australia. And I really want to go to Australia. So it turned out I didn't have mono. I just had like really bad tonsillitis. But my first American record I broke, I had a fever and tonsillitis. And I think I was just so like, I felt so bad. It kind of distracted me from everything else. And I just dove in and did it.
That's great. Then that was the 100-yard.
Yeah, that was the 100-yard breaststroke. And then a month later, I went to Australia, and I became the first American woman to ever win the 100 breaststroke title.
That's awesome.
Yeah, at World. So that was pretty. It was like awesome.
The one was kind of like your Michael Jordan flu game. You just
right?
It out. Yeah.
Awesome. You like just don't think about it. You just do it.
Yeah.
That's why when I mentor kids, I'm like, oh, you don't feel good. It's okay. You can still do. You can still do it. You can still do it. You're going to be okay. But if you're really sick, stay in bed.
Right. Or if you have mono.
Yes. Get in bed.
Yeah. So like because whenever you got to go to the Olympics, was that after college, or was that like in the middle?
So right after my senior year. My senior year had just finished, and my eligibility had just finished in March, and Olympic trials were that summer. So I went to Olympic trials, and I was so excited. I had like 8 American records under my belt. I had a world record with a relay under my belt. I had a world championship title under my belt. And I remember walking into it thinking, okay, I had so much more experience than I did. The last time I walked into Olympic trials, I was really excited because I was, a high school senior. I was very naive, thought I was training really hard. But once I'd gotten to college, I realized, okay, this is the big girl game. Like it's a little bit different.
Right.
And I kept telling myself, lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Like fate's not that cruel. I'm not going to get third again. It's not going to happen. And I'm one of those people that I'd be standing behind the blocks. I'd be dancing. I'd be waving at my parents. I'd be all excited. And before the 100 breast, I was terrified. I walked out behind the blocks and I wasn't waving at anybody. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I just kept telling myself, like, don't get third, don't get third, don't get third, which is the worst thing you can do. It's like the worst place mentally.
You're focusing on third, even though you're
Yes. I threw third place into the universe, and the universe threw third place right back at me. I did. I swam my heart out. I don't remember much about the race. We were all going into the wall at the same time, and I hit the wall. And I counted to 5, which is what I always did. And I turned around and I looked up at my name and I saw third place. And this time it was by 1/100th of a second, which is the smallest fraction of time you can miss the Olympic team by. It actually takes a little bit of talent to do that.
That's amazing, though. That's crazy.
I literally heard silence. And then I looked over at my coaches and I just said, what do I do? And my coach is going, get out of the pool. Get out of the pool. And I was like, yes, because I don't want to be on the cover of Swimming World again crying. I will get out of the pool. So I got out of the pool and I got out of the pool and my coach I remember seeing, so during the summertime, I would go home to Philadelphia or to Reading, Pennsylvania, and I would drive. My mom, the saint, on her summers off from teaching, my freshman and sophomore year, I was home the whole summer. And then in my other years, on certain days, she would drive me to Philadelphia, leaving at 4 a.m. and drive me to Philadelphia and would wait for me to finish my practices because they were so hard. I would fall asleep on the way home.
Man.
Like mid-sentence. So my coach Schulberg, I got to swim with Germantown Academy. And the first person I saw on the way to the hallway was Coach Schulberg. And he grabbed me and he looked at me and he just looked at me like in my eyes and he said, it ain't cancer, kid. You're going to be fine. And I was like, okay,
you're right.
Okay. Putting it into perspective right there. Like that's perspective. And I was like, you're right. Okay, you're right. But this still sucks. And so I saw my coach outside and I felt every emotion you can possibly feel in like the span of a minute. I was mad. I was angry. I wanted to race again. I wanted to be the little 2-year-old that stamps their foot on the ground. It's like, no, do over. I was like, I'm not even tired. Let's do it again. Like, let's race again. This is fine. Like 1/100th difference. And maybe we would have to race again. I'd be fine. I could do this. I felt every emotion you could possibly feel. Like it was like, not again. But the worst part about being an alternate on the Olympic team is you have to become drug tested because you are an alternate. So if anything happens to the first or second place person, you become the fill-in. So you have to be drug tested with them.
Right.
So they're celebrating in the drug testing room and you're sitting there devastated. And I remember like doodling on my drug testing paper. And the drug testing ladies would come over and be like, Kristy, you can't do that. I'm like, I just got third by 100. And they're like, okay. And then I was on the phone with my friend, Kara, and she's trying to cheer me up and tell me a story about how she forgot to put her car in park. And she like reversed it into her husband's car. And like, and I'm like, I'm trying to laugh, but I'm still, and they're like, you can't be on the phone. And I'm like, I just got third again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you want me to do. They're like, okay. And it's just like, the worst part is that it was my friend who had beat me by 100. So I was happy
you want to be
for
happy,
her.
but at the same time, you're like, devastated.
It's like, oh yes. So, but I knew I had a chance in the 200. And, so I kind of had to get over it. It was hard. I didn't want to go to the pool the next day because everybody wants to have a pity party for you.
So it's that next race was the next day. It wasn't the same day.
It was two. So I had one day off in between the two races.
Okay.
And my coach forced me to go to the pool because he knew that kind of everybody's pity party would really fire me up, because for a little bit, it was like, oh yeah, I know it stinks. And then you're just so sick of people telling you they're so sorry for you.
Right.
That you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here. Now I'm pumped. Let's do this. And so I was just so ready. By the time the 200 rolled around, I was like, let's do this. I did not train the last 4 years to miss the Olympic team again. So the 200 came around, and you have to swim 3 times: prelims, semifinals, finals. And after the prelim swim, I almost broke the American record, and I was really excited. And in the final swim, I almost broke the American record again, and I was 2.5 seconds ahead of anybody else. I was first place. And then the next night, for the next day, I started freaking out a little bit. I was like, oh God. I don't know what if I get third? And so what they did is, my brother was my biggest calming factor. Like, he was the one person in the world that could like calm me down. Mm-hmm. So he's all of 6'7", and they snuck him down onto the pool deck. And so he would sit with me, and when I would start freaking out and thinking like, okay, well, what if I get third place? He'd be like, so do you want to go see a movie tomorrow? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I would be like, oh my God, what if I don't make the Olympic team? He's like, so where do you want to go to dinner tonight? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? So I finally went to the ready room, and breaststrokers are a totally like different breed. Like, sprinters will stand there and they'll stare at you down, like giving you the death look. I got to the ready room, and the breaststrokers are having a dance party and singing, and everybody's like, hey, good luck. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I remember walking out, and this time I was waving and smiling and all excited. And I don't remember much about my race except for diving in and just taking off. And with like 15 yards to go, I couldn't see anyone else around me. So I started crying while I was swimming. I was like, I'm going to make the Olympic team. Oh my God. And then I started choking on water, and I was like, stop crying. You're gonna... And then I hit the wall and realized I made it. Nobody else had hit the wall yet. And I started like freaking out. And then Amanda Beard hit the wall, and we were freaking out together and just having such an awesome time. And everybody from the other lanes came over into our 2 lanes and were congratulating us. And we were having a party in the pool. And the officials were like, girls, like, good job, but you have to get out of the water. There's other events. And we're like, no, we don't have to. We made the Olympics.
Now you get to go celebrate in the drug test room.
No, well, first we got out of the pool, and all of a sudden I see like my brother pushing through security to run to me. And then I see security running after him and he jumps on me, and security like jumps on him.
That's hilarious.
It's like, I know. So they let him stay for, I think, like 2 minutes. We have pictures of him on deck, like just like laughing, like smugly, like, look what I did.
That's funny. So you made the Olympic team and you finally get to go. So like what was like the time from that to actually competing in the Olympics? Like, what did all of that look like as far as like training and getting ready and like, you know, that whole time frame? Yeah.
So it was so for the Sydney Olympics, it was awesome. We were allowed to go home for a couple of days, gather our things. And then we actually did our initial team training in Pasadena. And it was really cool because I just went to the Rose Bowl, because Georgia played the national like semifinal for the championship there for football. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like coming home. So we did our training camp there. We were there for, I want to say 2 weeks, and it was awesome. The city of Pasadena was so amazing. They gave us these little coupon books where different restaurants gave us like free dinners, or like, awesome. Like ice cream shops would give us like a free scoop of ice cream and a free movie. And it was just, Old Pasadena was so wonderful to us. And we went through all of our, like, we went to San Diego and got to go for our uniforming and for our credentials and things like that. And then as a team, we flew to the Olympics. We flew to the village and checked in there. And we dropped all of our stuff off, and then we went to our training camp. And It was in Melbourne, and we were training there for about a week before we returned to the village before opening ceremonies. And my favorite part about the training camp is that sometimes when you're training with people that you're not used to training, because all of us came from basically like our club teams or our like high school teams or college teams, but we trained together as like a group. So we split up into, okay, sprinters, you're going to go over here and train together. Mid distance, you train here. Distance, you train here. And all the coaches collaborated on workouts. And if there was something like one day that your coach wanted you to do specifically, you were able to do it. Like you never had to do the workouts. Like if it was something your coaches wanted you to do differently, you were able to. But for the most part, we all practiced together as a team. And I think it really brought us together that by the time the Olympics started, we felt like a full-on team. It was awesome.
That's cool.
It was really, really, really cool. And then I got to go because I didn't swim the 100. So that was a bummer, but I did get to go to opening ceremonies because I didn't swim until day 5. And it was so cool. Like I stood right in front of Olivia Newton-John. She walked right by me. And of course, like I'm the super fan that is like so excited that my mind blanked and I'm yelling, Sandy, Sandy. Oh, it was amazing.
That's hilarious. No, I bet there was so many people there, like as far as like just different athletes and celebrities. I mean, I'm sure that whole experience was just amazing.
That was the coolest thing is before the opening ceremonies, everybody kind of just flocks the streets. You come out. So in Sydney, it was awesome. So they made this entire neighborhood and they built these houses and they ended up selling them after the Olympics were over, but we were all living in houses and every room was converted into a bedroom. So there were like 20 of us into a house. And like so we all come out of our houses and we're all just walking around the streets, taking pictures with each other. And I remember just like taking pictures with the dream team. And I was like, oh my God. Because one of the Georgia basketball coaches was one of the coaches for basketball over at the Olympics. I was like, oh my God. Like I was super fanning again.
That's awesome. Yeah, you had to bust out the disposable camera again for that.
And that is the crazy thing is like all of my pictures from the Olympics are disposable pictures. I'm like, there's no Zoom. There's none of that.
That's awesome. So like, how did the whole like experience with competing in the Olympics go? Like, how did you do? And like, how did you deal with like the pressures of all of it?
By the time my race rolled around, I was so ready to get in the water. Like I was jumping out of my skin. So I didn't swim until day 5. And for the first 4 days, no, maybe 3 days, I have this like, I cannot sit down when I'm watching my friends race. Like I will stand there and jump and scream and my coaches are like, sit down, like save your energy, save your legs. Well, you give me a pom-pom and I am like super fan cheer. And I cheered so hard during the men's 400 free, believing that I could make them go faster with my pom-pom that I like hurt my elbow. The trainers were like, you're done. No more pom-pom. Like none. So by the time it was my turn to race, I was jumping out of my skin. Like I just wanted to get in the water. So I, for prelims, like I always tell people, you hear the commentators. It's so funny to me. Like you hear the commentators like, oh, it's prelims. They're conserving their energy for finals. Like, no, that's not how it goes. Like if you are swimming in the Olympics, you are swimming your butt off every single time just because you want to make it back to finals.
Right.
So in the prelim race, everybody races and you're trying to make it back to top 16. And then the top 16 swim that night. What happens is if you were in the morning race and you placed an even number, 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way up to 16, then you are going to be in the first heat of the prelims. So what that means is you have to race as fast as you possibly can, because the people who finished first, third, all the odd numbers, they're going to swim in the second heat. So they basically get the advantage of watching the first heat and then determining like, okay, well, they went this fast. How fast do I need to go? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if it's ever happened, but if you could swim and win heat 1, and then if 8 people in heat 2 beat you, you don't get to swim for a medal. So I had finished
That's crazy.
second. I know I had finished second in the semifinal, got out of the water, and I was watching the next heat go. And I just remember like thinking, slow down, slow down, slow down. And then I realized, Amanda was in the second heat. I was like, go, Amanda. Everybody else, slow down. Everybody else, slow down. So I had qualified to be fourth place. I was the fourth fastest qualifier coming back for the next night. And so it was one of those crazy things. Like the Olympics is not Olympic trials. So there was no way to sneak my brother on deck. There was no way to sneak him into the Olympic Village. Like if you want to bring a family member into the Olympic Village, you have to sign away their life, their passport, everything, their social security number. Oh my gosh, it was and they're allowed to visit, I think, once, or they were. So it was insane. And so I did my best to stay calm during the day. And by the time finals rolled around, I was just like, okay, let's go, let's go. I had to, and everybody's always like, well, what was it like swimming the 200? And it's one of those things that you've swam so many races like that the awesome part is you can just turn your brain off. Mm-hmm. Like if you let your brain start thinking about things, that's when you get in trouble. And that's when everything starts going haywire. So the best part about it is that, I was just behind the blocks and until they blew the whistle, I was just soaking everything in. Like I was trying to find my parents in the stands and I was looking over because Team USA was sitting on the deck that night and I was waving at people. And then the minute the whistle blew, it was just kind of like my body just went into autopilot. Because it was like, okay, it's just another race. It's just another 200. It may be the Olympics, but it's just another one. Right. No biggie. And I honestly, the one thing I do remember is that the camera, the underwater camera was in my lane. And my coach was like, don't look at it. He's like, that thing is not, he's like, don't chase it. It's going to go as fast as you. So if you go fast, it will go fast. If you go slow, it will go slow. Do not chase that camera. So I was like, okay, don't look at the camera. But I couldn't see anything. The lane lines were huge. I just remember swimming as fast as I could. And it hurt so bad. Like anybody who's like, oh yeah, it was the perfect race and I never felt pain. I envy them so bad because the last couple strokes, I was like, I don't know if I'm swimming legal anymore. I'm just pulling and kicking as hard as I can. It hurts so bad. And I hit the wall and I counted to 5. And in that like 5 seconds, I felt like the weight of the world had just lifted off my shoulders. Because I'd finally made the Olympics. I'd swam the race of my life. I couldn't have changed anything. Like I knew no matter what, nothing was going to change and I was going to turn around and see the results and that was it. And when I turned around and I saw second behind my name and I saw that I had gotten a medal, I lost it. Like I freaked out. Oh my gosh. I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And then Amanda came over. She had gotten third place and we were seriously like throwing a party in the pool. I was trying to find my parents. My hands were going all over the place. The next day on the Today Show, they asked me if I knew sign language because I was going so crazy. I was like, oh no. And they're like, we're going to show you, I think they said, we're going to show you the most emotional reaction to any medal yet. And that's when they were like, do you know sign language? I was like, oh God, no. That was not me doing sign language. I was just trying, I don't remember that.
That's funny. I mean, like, so what was that like after you like being on the podium and like getting a medal? Was it everything that you thought it would be, or was it just?
I couldn't stop crying. So like I got out of the water and I was like, you feel in that like span of time, every single emotion. So you want to like jump up on the blocks and do a flip back into the pool and you want to scream and dance and run around the pool and part of you also wants to curl up in the corner and just take a nap because you're really tired. And you're just like, oh, the relief. But when, as soon as I saw my coach, so we got to go, right back into the hallway and I see my coach running at me and I was just like, oh my God, like freaking out. And the thing about the medal ceremony at the Olympics is they do it right away. So all of a sudden you're soaking wet and they throw your award ceremony outfit at you and you're changing into it and you're still dripping wet and they give you this teeny tiny little comb and you're combing your hair and your hair is dripping wet. And it's like all these things going on at once and you're standing on the award stand like, oh, my suit's dripping down my legs. Like, this is so uncomfortable, but who cares? And I was bawling. I couldn't stop crying because I just kept thinking like, if I had given up after the first time I didn't make the Olympic team, I wouldn't be standing here. If I'd given up the second time, like I wouldn't be standing here. And I couldn't stop crying. And then I remember thinking like, oh my God, stop crying. People are going to think you're upset. Like that you didn't win. So I was like,
did you get another magazine cover?
Oh my gosh. No, I did. In my career, I have gotten other magazine covers that have replaced that, where I am very happy, where I'm happy and I'm smiling, and oh my God. But it was just, oh gosh, standing on the award stand, like watching 2 American flags go up. That was the coolest thing in the world. And then I followed it with the most uncool thing in the world, because they give us these little beanie babies to throw into the stands. And I was like, oh my God, Chelsea Clinton's in the stands. So I was like, I'm going to throw my beanie baby. Except for it didn't clear the glass wall into the stands. I was like, oh my God.
So Chelsea Clinton did not get her beanie baby.
I threw it on the second time. I was like, whoosh, got it up and over. I was like, oh God, who saw that?
Well, your arms are tired. Like, we'll give you that.
Yes. Right. I am exhausted. And the lactic acid building up. Sure. Or I should just never do sports on land. Either one.
That's funny. So like, once all of that is like, done and all the craziness has kind of died down, like, how was that for you? Like transitioning from going from that to not? Because I've had like awesome conversations with Caroline and Rebecca, and it's and I understand, like, it's tough going from that to going back to like not doing that and just more of an every day-to-day kind of routine.
Yes, it was really hard. So I ended up coming back from Australia, and then having a birthday, like, right, because our Olympics in Sydney, I think we got back like October 2nd, and my birthday was October 9th. So it was like, yay, my birthday. And then I ended up getting pneumonia. Like right after we got back, like full blown, like pneumonia, so sick. So that kind of added to everything. But I got the best homecoming when I got home. Like my hometown, I can't even describe it. My flight was delayed. There were thousands of people. I flew into my teeny tiny little airport in Reading. There were fire trucks shooting water over the plane. I got a fire truck like parade going home. There were thousands of people. I remember my mom hugging me, being like, because she knew I was tired, like so jet lagged. She's like, don't be mad. And I was like, I'm not mad. I'm just so tired. And like, I love cheese. She's like, I brought you a string cheese. I'm like, oh my God, thanks. So I'm standing outside of a limo waving at people eating a string cheese. Oh my, that's just great. But there were like thousands of people lining the street on the way to my high school. And we got to my high school, and there were like thousands of people, like the band, cheerleaders, the mayor. Oh my God, it was so cool.
That is awesome.
I had the best homecoming. And then I got to stay at home for a little bit, which I think was really helpful for me, because I just got to chill. Like I was very like, my hometown was really awesome. Like I went and I visited swim teams and did that, but I also had time to kind of just recover. But when I got back to Georgia, that's when I got sick, and I was like, ooh, I need my mom now. But it was hard. I had to actually jump back into, so I wasn't allowed to do any of my student teaching while I was swimming, because you can't miss any days, like away from the kids, to go a week for conference meet, a week for NCAA championship. So as soon as I got back, I started in the winter quarter, I started my student teaching, and I started all of my practicums in classrooms. So I had that to kind of keep me going. So once I got back and I was finished with the Olympics, I had to do, at University of Georgia, you do 3 semesters where you do 2 semesters like practicum in a classroom before you do your full semester of student teaching. Mm-hmm. They make sure you really want to be a teacher before they throw you out into the real world. And so I had that to go to. I went right into student teaching. I went right into my 3 semesters of student teaching.
That's awesome. So like, whenever, did you know like you were kind of done with swimming after that, or did you contemplate it for a while?
No. So I actually kept swimming until 2004, and I made national teams, and I went on, and I was still competing. I got to go over and do the like Grand Prix over in Europe, and I got to be a professional athlete for a while, which was super awesome. Oh my God, it was super awesome. I was sponsored by Speedo for 2 years and Nike for 2 years, which allowed me to keep training. It was so wonderful. I loved it. But in 2003, I ended up coming down with chronic fatigue syndrome. And so that kind of put a kink in the plans.
Yeah.
I did. So that was actually one of my hardest things, is that I had qualified for world championships in 2003. But that summer is when I came down with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I've gone over to world championships, and I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. And I ended up not making finals in the 200 breast, which I knew things weren't going to go according to plan. But that was hard. That was really hard, not even making finals. But I also knew that my body was having a really hard time.
Yeah. I mean, you pushed yourself for so long. Like, I mean, I can't imagine like what you have, just being a part of an Olympic team, like what you have to put your body through. Like, you put your body through a lot for a long time, and it kind of had to catch up with you and kind of make you slow down to recover.
It did. It absolutely did. So by the time I went to Olympic trials in 2004, I got third place again, but this time the third place, I was okay with it because it was almost like, look how far I've come back from where I was. But the cool thing is that I got named to the world championship team. After the Olympics, I got named to the world championship team in Indianapolis. They built a pool where the Indiana Pacers play, and it was short course, and I got to go, and I trained just once a day for it. It was awesome. I got named team captain of Team USA along with my friend Lindsay Banco and Jenny Thompson, and I got to finish my career on my terms, which is way better than like missing the Olympic team and just being done.
Right. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So then after that is when I was finished. So I was finished in October of 2004. Yes, 2004. And then it was, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Luckily, I had my college degree I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I had the hardest time switching my degree. I had the hardest time switching my certification from Georgia to Pennsylvania. It was such a pain. I had to retake all of the tests that basically give you your certification, even the basic reading, writing, and math tests to do your student teaching, to get into the College of Education program. I had to.
Is that pretty common? Whenever
everything. I think Pennsylvania is a really hard state to get certified in. But so it was a struggle, like trying to find my groove and just trying to figure out, like, okay, I know I want to be a teacher. Why is this so hard? Like, why is this? And it was like really stressful. And then trying to find, like, I think being a swimmer, you become a very disciplined person. You become a very time-oriented person, like knowing when things have to be due, when you have to do things, like staying on top of things and making sure that things are like done until completion. So I think that really helped me, but it was so stressful coming out of swimming where everything is so routine and you're told, okay, like be here, do this, like show up. Right. And all of a sudden it's me like having to go out and call the Department of Education and arrange for my test to be done and do it was a huge adjustment to becoming, it's like adulting 101.
Yeah. And that's what they had, Caroline and Rebecca had kind of said too. I mean, you've had a coach telling you everything that you needed to do for like the last however many years. And like, now it's all on you. And like, it's a hard transition, but you were talking about how like stressful that situation was of just trying to get your certification switched and all of that. But I mean, compared to like the stress that you put on yourself going through the Olympic process, like, do you feel like that's helped you kind of be able to handle any kind of stressor just better?
Absolutely. I think definitely, I always kind of come back to, I've stood on the blocks of the Olympics before and I stared down the pool and I dove in and I swam with the fastest people in the world and came out just fine. Right. Like if I can handle that, I'm pretty sure I can handle everything. But everything that life like throws at you is such a different, like every single like obstacle you encounter is so different. So it's like you kind of have to figure out, which way you're going to roll with it. Like how are you going to, you're going to have to look at this and just think about, okay, how's this going to define me? What am I going to do with this? How am I going to attack it? What's my plan? What is the best plan of action? And sometimes your like knee-jerk reaction is just to freak out. And it's like, and I get it. That's how I am all the time. I'm just like, oh my God, no, this is like the worst thing in the world. And it's like, okay, 5 minutes later, I'm like, okay, calm down. This is my option. This is what I can do. These are like, I'm a thinker, like for sure. Like I always try to plan out every situation and all my options and figure out which one's the best. Like that's for sure. And I think that, just having to deal with pressure. I sat at Olympic trials this past time in 2016 and just looked at these kids behind the blocks and was like, oh my God, that was me. How the heck did I do that? Like, I feel like I would crumble now. I feel like, oh my God, I would just pass out behind the blocks. But I think that having to handle that kind of pressure and just be able to compartmentalize things and just be able to kind of like shut off part of that, like feels that pressure. I'm just being able to just breathe through it and just know that like I'm equipped to deal with it. I think that really transitioned into my real life. Yeah. Like just know that, okay, no, you shut that part off that just wants to panic immediately. Right. And remember that yes. And remember that I have strategies and I'm equipped to deal with all of this.
Absolutely. No. And like, how do you think, because I mean, you are a teacher now and are you loving it?
Oh, I do. I love teaching. That's do.
Awesome. That's awesome. And like, how is like I mean, I'm sure you kind of answered it in the last question, but like, your experiences through everything you've gone through with your training in the Olympics, like how has that rolled over into like your teaching methods, like how you reach out to kids, how you relate to them and help them just develop as a person?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, my favorite thing that kids tell me is this is hard. Like, but this is hard. I'm like, yeah, but if it was easy, you would be bored. Right? They're like, yeah. But I do. I try to definitely like let kids know, yeah, everything is hard. Like everything that you're going to face is definitely, it's going to challenge you, but that's what life is. You're going to encounter challenges for the rest of your life. That's what life is. But how are you going to face them? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and just be defeated by it? Or are you going to use a strategy that we've learned? Are you going to ask for help? What is going to be your strategy to overcome this? And I think that that's one of the really big things that I try to teach my children is that, you know, you have strategies to use. So let's use them, whether it's asking for help, whether it's using something you know how to do, whether it's, you know, using a resource that you know, like let's tackle these strategies instead of, I even like have my students repeat, like last year we would repeat, like, we were like, we are not helpless. We are not helpless. We can do this. I got this. We can do this. I am not helpless. Like we would repeat it over and over and over again, just so that they know, like they have the strategies to overcome any obstacle that they're encountering. Let's just figure out how to do it and we can figure it out together. And then I think like the other thing I try to remind them is like, keep asking questions. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, hey guys, I have a question in my head. Who wants to guess what it is? And they're like, what? I'm like, okay. And then I ask it. And it was probably a question that 15 of like 22 kids had in their head. And then I'm like, who had the same question? They raised their hand. I'm like, why did nobody ask it? And I'm like, were you afraid? Were you afraid to look silly? Like, I'm like, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like you are naturally inquisitive. Like you need to know the answer. And if you, I tell them how like I was the worst math student in the world. Like my mom is a math teacher. My brother ended up being an engineer. My dad was an accountant. And somehow I missed the math gene. So I sit there looking at them doing math. I'm like, who wants to cry? I'm like, anybody? Because if I were you, I probably would have been crying in third grade by now because this is hard. You are cross multiplying fractions and this is hard. So I'm like, so it's okay. I'm with you. I try to tell them, I'm like, I get it. You guys, I get it, but you need to ask questions. Like keep asking questions. Don't ever be afraid to ask questions. Like number one, you learn more. And number two, I mean, it's fun to ask questions and always to want to know what's something new.
Right. No, I love that. I love that. And like, you know, Kristy, what are you working on in the future? Like I know, you've been doing some stuff with Rise Elite, right? Like, is there anything else that you're working on in the future that you just want to put out there and share with everybody?
Heck yeah. So a couple of things that I've been doing is I'm still doing swim clinics. So it's awesome. So through Josh Davis, who I swam with in 2000, he does breakout swim clinics and they're so much fun where I get to travel to different teams and basically go share my story and share to, I think it's really fun to share to kids like, you see these Olympians on the TV. Like, we were not all Olympians at your age.
Right.
Like, I was not. I was queen of the participation ribbon. Like, it's really important for them to understand, like, don't give up on yourself. Like, do not give up on yourself. Absolutely not. Have a dream, and don't ever like be discouraged to have a dream and say you want to be an Olympian, or say you want to be an engineer, or say you want to be an astronaut, even though like maybe your science grades aren't great right now. So what? Like, you never know what you can accomplish in your life. So that's one of my favorite things that I get to do, is go out and just share my story with kiddos. I love working with Caroline and Reb. It's so much fun. Rise is so, I feel like it's just awesome to be able to give back, and to be able to, it took us so long to build the knowledge that we have, and just the little tips and strategies and techniques and things that we've learned along the way, just from like the best in the business, basically, like,
Yeah.
And just with our mental toughness and our mental training. And it's so rewarding to be able to share that with the next generation and just help them develop their Olympic mindset. And I think that that's one of my favorite things in the world to do. I absolutely love it. It's so much fun.
That's awesome.
So much fun. I always,
amazing work with that.
oh my gosh.
It's awesome.
Thank you. I get off the phone calls and I'm just like so amped up. Like, I'm like, yeah, I can't. It's like, I shouldn't do these before bedtime because I never fall asleep afterwards because I'm so pumped up and excited. But I'm also working on my reading specialist certification. So I took a half-year sabbatical from teaching to actually become a full-time student again. And so I'll be returning to teaching January 23rd. They just had a snow day at home. So I'll be returning January 23rd to my classroom.
That's awesome. And then
Thank you.
Yeah, and Kristy, what is the best way for people to follow you online, like on social media, or if you have any websites? Like, what's just the best way for people to keep up with everything that you're doing?
Sure. My Instagram is at Kristy Kowal, and my Twitter handle is also at Kristy Kowal.
Awesome. And then, Kristy, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's something that was your biggest takeaway through your whole journey so far. But like, if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Only one piece?
No pressure.
No pressure. I think my biggest piece of advice would be do something that scares you every day. Absolutely. Do something that scares you. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone.
No, I love that. I love that. It's perfect. And Kristy, just thank you so much for taking time to come on. You were awesome. And I'm just excited to see all of the amazing work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Kristy. Her story is just extremely inspiring, and she's doing such positive work. So I'm excited for you guys to follow her on social media to keep up with everything that she's doing. You can find the social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's DRKASEY Johnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Kristy's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Kristy, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. And like I spoke about in the intro, also be sure to check out my first children's book of my Healthy Children's Book series called Maddox's Trip to the Chiropractor. Each purchase of the book supports the Unlock Wellness Project, which applies a wellness bag to a child in need for each book purchased. You can learn more about the book and the Unlock Wellness Project on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Shop tab, then choose the children's book option. You'll be able to read a short description and even watch a short video to learn more. If you do purchase the book, be sure to share it on social media using the hashtag UWProject. I'll repost it and give you a shout out on the podcast. But I hope you guys love the book. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you loved today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.